Thank you for taking this moment to breathe and listen to what can change your life forever. My name is Ragnar Zinikas, and I'm the founder of Starpreneur TV, How to Dominate the Decade talk show, World Women Conference and Awards, the creator of Coral Desk, the coach of the Changemakers, and co-author of the Dominate the Decade book. My mission is to empower through education. And thank you very much for joining us today. Today, I have the honor to talk with Jo Grace. And Jo, as a coach, has very defined three words that are faith, freedom, and family. And clients who work with Jo get into how powerful faith is to live a life of purpose. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Jo Grace. Jo, tell us your story. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your passion? And I know that we're able to do this interview in a very last minute, in the sense that you are traveling to somewhere very soon. So tell us more about you, who you are, and then we talk about more about that.
Sure. So my name is Jo Grace, and I am also a co-author of the book Dominate the Decade. That's how Ragni and I met. And we also met through our John Maxwell team coach, trainer, and speaker connection. And through that, we met Tuan and April, who run M21 Empowerment. And we were in a 90-day challenge to become the author for the first time. And that's really what prompted me to be a part of this little Dominate the Decade movement that we've started, because I've told myself for years I was going to write a book. And I've been an Army chaplain for 12 years, and I was first deployed after only 4 months of becoming a chaplain. So I went to chaplain school at the Army and have a bachelor's degree and a seminary degree. I went and did a year of clinical pastoral education, which helped me process why I wanted to minister, and not minister out of meeting my own needs, but to put other people first, to listen to where they're from and not try to impose my theology or my frame of reference onto what they needed at the time. But it was a long process for me to become an Army chaplain. I've been an Army chaplain almost 12 years, but it took me just about that same amount of time to actually become an Army chaplain. Because you see, I was denied in an area for many times that I wanted to dominate. I was turned down 3 times to become an Army chaplain. So it took 4 attempts for me to become an Army chaplain. And after I did become a chaplain, I was deployed with a unit to Iraq after only 4 months. And so I've been telling myself for 10 years I was going to write a book about my experiences. And like most people, we put it on our 5-year plan, then it becomes a 10-year plan, then it never happens. And so through meeting Tuan and through our John Maxwell connection, I saw this, and this was like, this is my passion, is to write. I've been writing all my life. I write as a minister. I've been writing poetry most of my adult life. My father is a lifelong poet. But getting a book writing was something I was passionate about, because I wanted to share my chaplain experience and how God has worked in my life with other people. You know, I still stay in contact with people I've served with in the Army, especially those I've deployed with, even though it's been 12 years now since we came home. I still stay in contact with those people, those soldiers, my battle buddies, all this time passed. And I want to have that connection with you, because I have a passion to serve other people. In the John Maxwell team, we say we seek to add value to other people. So I want to serve you. I want to empower you to be battle ready. So regardless if you're in the military or not, we all face a battle, or we face a journey, we face a destiny we have to face, because I believe we're all created with a unique purpose by God that only we can fulfill. And part of that, the way we accomplish that, is through faith and prayer. I like to call myself, we all are mindset and leadership coaches in some form or fashion. But I like to say I'm a faith mindset, because especially with all that's going on with coronavirus around the world now, it's made us all, some people say we're in the same boat, we're in this together, and people disagree. But one thing is for sure, you are either operating from a foundation of faith or a foundation of fear. And I want to encourage you to have a foundation of faith. And through this broadcast, I want to encourage you to come on a journey with me, to go with grace and to grow with grace. So kind of funny thing, when Ragnar put the the invitation to the show, she put a race for your grace. I just thought that was funny because it's actually the other way around. There's grace for your race, because you don't have to run to get grace. God's grace is available for you. It's unmerited favor is what God's grace is. But that was just funny because it's another take on, and it emphasizes that grace is so important in our lives. Grace has always been a part of my life, but it took me to experience it in a meaningful way, to go through hard times. And I struggled for a lot of my life. I grew up an angry person and comparing myself to others, even though I was raised in the church. I had a great family. Every family has its dysfunctions. We won't go into that, but I had a great family, a great mother and father, and a great sister, and had that support. But I was programmed with stuff I wasn't aware of until halfway through my life. And through that year of clinical pastoral education, which is working in a hospital as a pastor, if you're not familiar with that, it basically distills your faith through the environment of the hospital, and we're working with patients. That was really insightful for me, because during that time, I went through a painful divorce. My kids were all in junior high and high school at the time. And so I was without my family, going through the process of losing my children and going through a divorce, and who to blame for that. And it helped me to really process where I was at and where God had me. Because at the time, I felt a calling to Army chaplaincy when I was married. And when I went through the divorce, I figured, well, I screwed that up. That's the end of that hope and dream to become an Army chaplain. Now I'm divorced, man, and my children live in a different state, and my life is a mess. But and most of this, I have to just say without going into detail, was my own doing. I went through a lot of hard times. Some of it was not my choice. Most of it was my choices. But God intervened and redeemed my life, because I tried to wreck my life, but God redeemed it through lots of different experiences, mostly God's intervention, putting great people in my life. Like I say in my my little course on our Dominate the Decade, is that you have to have a mentor. It's like one of my favorite movies is Gone in 60 Seconds, and there's a car thief mentoring the young car thief, and he says, "You need a mentor." No, he says, "You need a role model." So that's what I said. My course title is "You Need a Mentor," and that's what I hope to be for you. I've had mentors in my life from the very start, from before I became a chaplain. Just friends in my church, other men that loved God that were older than me and farther down the road to encourage me to get past my anger, to Army chaplains that trained me when I was in chaplain school, to break through from the comparison trap I found myself. And I always believed that I knew I was called by God and felt confident I could do the job. But at other times that I would be discouraged or allow the enemy to discourage me, I would believe that or compare myself to others and see how other people were being successful and said, I need to be like that. And I hadn't really fully tapped into the peace to know that God created me the way I am. And that really helped me to become an Army chaplain and to be successful at it and to dominate an area I'd been denied. And a part of that denial, too, was because I lacked discipline. Some of that denial was because I couldn't lose weight, and the Army expects you to be able to do PT and be in decent shape. So I didn't have the discipline to do that, so I got sent home several times. But once I became a chaplain, God continued to put mentors in my life that helped me to shape myself and build my character and learn the skills I needed to be a chaplain, but at the same time encouraged me to be who I was. And I thank God for that, because without that, I don't think that I would be successful. I think anytime you find success in your life, you have to look around and find that somebody else was there with you, either behind you, beside you, carrying you. The real thing is Jesus is carrying the whole footprints in the sand idea, that if you only see one set of footprints, because Jesus was carrying you during that difficult time. But I've had mentors through the Army, my commanders I've worked with that have mentored me and coached me, and especially my senior chaplains that really encouraged me to embrace who I am, because I firmly believe it's the same for you. Whatever your journey is, whatever your message is, whatever you hope to accomplish, you will never reach everybody. So you need to be in touch with who you are, and you have a message that you were created to tell the world. The world needs to hear your story, and you won't reach everybody. Even like now in the Army, whatever unit I'm assigned to, I know that I won't always reach everybody, But I'll reach nobody if I'm not myself. If I don't be who I'm called to be, I will not be an effective minister. So, and those soldiers that I don't connect with, and I make sure they find somebody else that they can connect with. So I still provide ministry to my whole entire unit, but I have to also find peace and know that my best ministry is when I'm tied into who I'm supposed to be and be at peace with that.
So would you say that you mentioned your mentors in the army, but who would you mention? And we already heard about John Maxwell as well, but who would be mentors besides that influence in your life? Like what gives you inspiration and motivation?
My inspiration and motivation ultimately comes from my Lord, because my two biggest sources of reading, I read the Bible every day. So obviously as a Christian, that's my foundation, is the Bible. And another great book that I love to read and encourage other people to do is a book by James Allen. It's actually only about 12 pages. It's called As a Man Thinketh. And it's powerful because it's all about your mind and your thinking. And from that, I drew this idea that we should be bold and be beautiful and have beautiful thoughts. A quote I have from him I want to read to you. It's, "Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and struggle and peace." So we do have the power to create strength and peace and joy in our life. And ultimately, joy comes from the Lord, but we also have the right mindset, because if we don't have the right mindset, Jesus is not going to give us a lobotomy. The Lord is not going to make your life great if you don't do your part. We have to surrender our struggles to him and know that he's going to see us through and walk with us. And in that way, we can, with a healthy mindset, we can have joy and strength and peace. Now, as far as other mentors, of course, John Maxwell is our great mentor, who is awesome. Everybody knows the name John Maxwell. He's like the leadership guru of the world. But if I hadn't met John Maxwell, I wouldn't have met Paul Martinelli, who was actually the driving force behind the John Maxwell team, and then his partner, Roddy Galbraith. So I would say those two are my closest mentor that I have a daily interaction with through Empowerment Living, their organization. And especially when this idea I have that I want to encourage you to run your own race. Roddy Galbraith has several great quotes. He's an actual coach to coaches. He teaches people how to coach other people. But he has this great quote that says, "You can't magic your way out of fear. You have to ride your way out." And so I just love that quote. And it kind of gets to the heart of what his partner, Paul Martinelli, says. He says you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to jump and build your wings on the way down. So I want to dovetail off of those quotes and just tell you to face your fears, because I told Rodney before I started this, I'm nervous. I'm not, I'm great in front of a crowd, but my real strength is one-on-one with people and exploring who they are, hearing their story, and coaching and mentoring, encouraging them. And I'm still not comfortable behind a camera, but I'm always comfortable sharing my story. And that's what I find passionate about, sharing my story and hoping that my story will encourage you to tell your story, because again, the world needs to hear your story. And I want to encourage you to get out there and run your own race, because you have a divine race that only you can do. Nobody can do or connect to the people that you can. You're going to come across people in your life that if you don't find that boldness and push away from that fear and find your faith to step out and say, I'm going to do what I know God's called me to do. God's been speaking to me for years about doing whatever, this one thing, and I've been resisting it. I've not surrendered fully to what he's called me to do. I don't think I'm ready yet. And that resonates for me too, because I was a John Maxwell team member long before April and Ragni and Tuan were, but I met them because of the website. I've been a John Maxwell team member for 2 or 3 years before I did anything. So I'm speaking from experience that I know what it's like to just wait and think, oh, I need to study this and study all the material and know it by heart, and go over my notes. But you just got to get out there and do it. I mean, right now I'm scared and petrified right now, but I'm confident that God has a message that he wants you to hear, and so I have to be obedient to that.
Thank you for sharing your story, and there are parts which are very intimate and definitely needs courage to say it out loud. I see that you focus now a lot on your family. Is it
Yes.
because your previous experience, because you were not able to really, in a sense, have your ideal situation before? Or what changed? What changed in you, and how do you really have the balance between your family and your work? And your work is not easy. So
No,
just
you're
told me
right.
that you're going to be sent to Kuwait in a
Yes.
very short time. So how do you find that balance?
Well, that's about a four-part question, but I'll try to answer all that. For family, I've always been a family man. I just, when I was in seminary, I was burning the candle at both ends, that proverbial thing. But I was also trying to burn in the middle too. I was working full time, working part time, going to school full time. My wife at the time was going to school full time, working part time, and we had the I would say the cojones to try to think we could homeschool our kids in the midst of that. It was a disaster waiting to happen, and I lacked the discipline to handle it well. And I wrecked my life. I made a lot of bad decisions we won't go into. So that's my failure in that part. I failed as a husband. I don't think I failed as a father, but I definitely just didn't help my children by failing as a husband. So I set a bad example. But I moved on from there and made peace with that, and God's forgiven me. My children and I made peace with that. My son and I have a great relationship, and but family is still important to me. My heritage, my family name Grace comes from Ireland, and I'm sure I have some Viking in it because we trace back to Normandy. And like Ragnar said, I'm getting ready to do a deployment to Kuwait for 9 months. We already have plans to go visit the homeland. We're going to go to Ireland and visit the counties where the name Grace comes from. But so family is very important to me. My children are very important to me. My wife Michelle and I have a blended family of 5, and we have one more teenager to boot out the house, and then we have 5 grown children, and they all have their own families, and we're racking up grandchildren. And in fact, I call them my grand buddies, and I stole this from my cousin. He's always been grand dude. When I was a teenager, we would go to family reunions in Arkansas, and I was always hear his little grandchildren. I was saying, grand buddy. So I was like, that's what I'm going to be. I'm not going to be a grandpa. I'm too young at heart to be a grandpa. So I don't have my coffee cup before I'll show you. My wife made these cups for us for our deployment. And let's see, it may not show up with this background thing. It says right there on my cup, it says Grand Dude. That's my cup my wife made for me. So I am Grand Dude, and my little grand buddies have 7 grandkids and more coming. And so that's an important part of my life. In fact, one of my goals while I'm gone is to have my Harley at home, have a sidecar put on it so I can drive my grandkids around in it. So, and and then about the balance of work and home life, that is a very important topic about having balance in your life. And for me as a minister, I call it having a Sabbath, because most of the times when I'm in the chaplain mode, I'm working on Sundays. And so I try to create that balance where I take off time during the week to refresh my batteries. Sometimes that might be an entire day. Sometimes that might be only half a day. But regardless of what your experience is or your background or your career or what your calling is, you have to create harmony in your life and balance where you have time to refresh and evaluate. And that's one of the letters of Go with Grace is to, I have an acronym, Go with Grace. There's a letter for each word grace. And part of it is to evaluate your efforts. That's what the E is for. And we have to have time to evaluate our efforts. Experience, someone said experience is the greatest teacher, but I don't believe that. The only good teacher is evaluated experience. So we have to evaluate our experience. And if we don't take time to make downtime to reflect and to ask ourselves deep questions, and we won't really learn. We'll just keep having people will say, oh, I have 10 years of experience on this job. I said, no, you probably have 1 year experience repeated 10 times over and over and over. So we have to evaluate our experiences. And that's even more reason why I need to have a mentor, because most of us lack the ability to really see what's going on in our lives. if we don't take the time to sit down with someone that we have a connection with to ask us difficult questions, because sometimes we just need to be asked difficult, honest questions, hard questions, and wrestle with what's going on in our life and how we can learn from it.
How do you prepare yourself and how do you prepare your family when you go, for example, now you're going to Kuwait? I would say that especially mentally to be prepared for it, what do you do?
Well, first and foremost, my faith is my grounding. So my wife and I know that we prayed about it. I've been trying to find employment for 2 or 3 years. So I've been preparing for 3 or 4 years to be away from my family and in agreement that this is what we wanted to do as a family, and know that as part of my job as an Army chaplain to deploy. Like I said, it's been 12 years since I deployed the last time. And for me, that was way too long. I was wanting to deploy a long time ago. And this came up, but I've been preparing for it and praying about it and just having a strategy to how to keep in touch. Because a lot of times when families are separated for the military, or you work overseas, or you're away for a long time, if you're not intentional about staying connected, it's easy to grow apart, because you're away and you have a life that you're living here apart from the other person, whether it's a deployment or you're away from your family for work or whatever the case may be, or a tragedy, you have to be across the country to take care of your elderly parent. Well, you can't have the same experiences because you're not in the same space, but you have to be intentional about sharing what's going on a regular basis. So I like to say, instead of just surviving a situation, you can learn to thrive through it by staying connected. So even just yesterday when I got back to the room, so my wife has an iPhone, I have an Android, so we can't FaceTime. Like, we're figuring what we're gonna do. Well, with all this quarantine stuff, we're supposed to be home longer. They originally told us, well, you're not going to ship on your ship date. You're going to stay at home and shelter in place till this quarantine is over. Well, then we had 3 days notice. Like, nope, you're gonna stick to your plan and go. So then we had like 3 days to pack and get ready to go. So we originally were thinking we had more time together, and then we didn't. So I was going to get a new phone so we could FaceTime, and that never happened. So thank God for Zoom, and we did our first Zoom with my wife. So I got to see everybody, got to see the dogs, and my grandson was there. So I got to see my grandbuddy, and he kept kissing the screen. So I kept messing up because he would try to kiss the screen. So that's one of the ways. You just have to find creative ways to stay connected.
I think a lot of people during this crisis have been put in a situations that they really need to think of what is their legacy that they are going to leave behind. And one part of it, which even me having it as a part of Mastermind, I had my groups writing 3 letters. One to themselves, who I am and what is my purpose. The other one to the family, the day that I'm gone. And 3 is sort of, if you haven't had the time to make a will, you do that. Do you have those?
I don't have all those. I do have a will, but that's a great idea. I'm going to steal that from you and use it. That's awesome. I could definitely see that applying to the military context. That's great. Because
we never know, and that's the thing. We always think that we have the time, and yet with this crisis, and especially it's a health crisis, we have seen that from one day to another we can just lose people besides us. Obviously the risk is the same, that you sit in the car and you never come back. But that's the thing, when we don't take really the time to reflect on our lives. So whoever is listening, for you as well, take time, sit down. First, do the discovery within yourself. Who I am and what is my purpose. And Joe is talking today about the purpose, no? And purposeful life. The second is, we never know when today we're fine, maybe tomorrow morning we're not going to wake up. So there's something that could ease, and also the words that we might not say out loud, and maybe we don't repeat them too often. So have those have those letters ready. And as for the third letter, this has been actually the hardest to write, because nobody really wants to think about it, and everybody wants to live forever. So I even had two people which were saying that I mentally, like, I can't write them because it's too, like, all the instructions that, and I said, can you imagine if you leave and you leave everything as it is? They have no clue. What do you want? How do you want? All of that. So you are making, besides them grieving, you are making them also to put up with all of that, which you could just take the time, sit down and write it down. So so it just as we were talking about it, and obviously I think that especially when people are choosing their career as you have chosen, or you've been chosen, then you need to be ready for those situations. So and obviously thank you for your services, and this is something which I cannot even imagine how it would want to be wife of a person that does it, because I tried to imagine, like, oh, if my husband would say that in 3 days I'm going to Kuwait, and then it's like, oh my God. But also to have that type of relationship where you can say it's okay, it's, have no fear, whatever comes, it comes, and just see it from the practical point of view. That's why I wanted to ask you the question, like, how do you prepare yourself? Do you do special, I don't know, rituals or whatever, in a sense? But you approach it very practical, saying that the phones and the connection. And I was like, oh, I never thought about that I would answer that question like that. But as we were talking about the legacy, some people often regret their past. Would you do anything differently if you have been given the opportunity today?
Right. I'll address that question. I want to dovetail off of what you said too, because that is some really great stuff, and I'm going to go back and record those when we are done, because I think of, I'm an extrovert, and so I'm about action and doing stuff. So I think about what I can do to be connected. But for those of you out there that are introverts, that this may not speak to you, because we're created, each of us have different personalities. Some of us are extroverts, some of us are introverts. So I can really see how, if you're an introvert, writing those letters would be really cathartic. I mean, regardless if you're an extrovert or an introvert, writing those 3 letters that Ragney's talking about can be so powerful, because it's cathartic. And it's good to think about those things before it's too late. And I didn't share the part also about the last 5 years has been a hospital chaplain. So I've dealt with more than my fair share of death. And I can tell you that the majority of people are not prepared for their own death, much less for the death of their loved ones. So that's, I just echo what Ragney said. That is so powerful. And I'm definitely going to steal that tool and put that tool in my toolbox, because I can tell you the majority of people have not ever had that idea, much less actually done it, because most people come to the hospital and they are full of regret and guilt because of unsaid stuff. And even if you can't say it to that person face to face, having that written down, if not even for yourself, but for your family and those you care about, will give them such a sense of peace, especially if you have things left unsaid or unforgiveness in your life. Besides the fact that unforgiveness is so bounding, it ties you up and you cannot be free physically, mentally, or spiritually. You're just wrapped up in every sense. But if you can find a way to forgive yourself and let that go, and writing is a great way to do that. And it doesn't expose that except for yourself to see it and to experience it and have that cathartic experience between you and God. And if no one ever sees it till you're gone, and I've heard of other people that do that and they write it and tear it up, just the fact to get it out of their head and onto paper and get those emotions out and expressed so they can deal with it. So that's an awesome tool, Ragney. I really love that. But about if you would change your past, that was the question. If you could go back and change something, would you go back and change something, right? That's your question?
Yeah.
Well, I asked that question because a lot of people are full of regret when they look back at their life and they think, man, I really screwed up, or God could not use me with my past. But you know what? The more ugly your past is, the more God can use you, because God is in the business of redeeming your life. I mean, my name is Grace, and what better person? I mean, I was not a perfect person. I screwed up, and I really screwed up my life. I didn't go into all the details, and I won't spare you. And I really screwed up in a really big way. But God still used me in a powerful way. And he still does, and he will still continue to do that, because of, not because of who I am, but that's because of who God is. And he has the same love and passion for you and purpose for your life. So when people look back at their life and feel regret and guilt and think, man, I could never be used by that, or I could never do what this person does. First of all, I go back to my thing about the comparison trap. You'll never be set free or fully embrace who you're meant to be when you're comparing yourself to others. And that's really my message today, is not to do that, because I've done that. I did that for most of my adult life, and it got me nowhere and almost prevented me from fulfilling my purpose. So you have to know that all your past is your past, but it doesn't determine your future. God can redeem your life and set you on a new path, and use your past experiences to bless other people and to encourage other people. You know, I've shared with other people. In fact, there's a good friend of mine who it was a time when I was an Army chaplain for basic training soldiers, and he was a brand new Army recruit, but he'd had pastoral experience, and he wanted to know about becoming an Army chaplain. And I find great pride in the fact I shared my story with him. And then a couple of years later, I found him at my endorsing conference, and lo and behold, because of our interaction when he was a basic training soldier, he became a chaplain too. So there's all kinds of ways God can use you in ways that you won't even imagine. So yeah, we like to go back and change some things we did, some decisions we made that were terrible, that really sucky situation that were just ugly. But you allow God to use those, to redeem those for his purposes, because what the enemy meant for evil, God can use for his glory and for your good. And that is a true statement. I can promise you, if you will surrender that to God, he will use you in a powerful way beyond what you can even imagine. Even my time in the Army, I've gotten great evaluations as people come up and say, Chaplain Grace, you did this or that, and it really made an impact in my life. And like, sometimes it blows me away, but that's God. It's not really my skill. It's just more my availability. If you make yourself available to God and surrender your life to him, he will use you in a powerful way and blow your socks off.
So, Joe, before I ask you your 3 recommendations how to dominate the decade, whoever was able to join us here in Zoom, unfortunately, we were not able to go live in Facebook, but this video is going to be uploaded as soon as we finish. So if you are looking at the recording as well, please leave your questions. Me and Joe are going to take care of them. We will answer them. And until Joe is going to answer how to dominate the decade, please leave your questions here in the chat area. Thank you. So Joe, your 3 recommendations how to dominate the decade.
Okay, so we kind of jumped all around and shared my story about how I was denied an area I wanted to dominate when it became to becoming an Army chaplain. So I use my name Grace as an analogy, as an acronym. Now, ultimately, Grace allows us to have a relationship with God, and prayer keeps us there. So that's what Grace is ultimately about. But for me, and for what I'm sharing with you, Grace has an additional meaning. And I like to think of it this way. So for the first letter, I say, you have to be genuine, or if you want to look at it another way, you have to be authentic. And this goes back to what I said about you have to be yourself. And you can only find peace and passion and tap into who you're created to be when you are yourself. You can't try to be somebody else. You can't compare yourself to others. And I want to be that kind of person to be available to you, that if you struggle with that, to help you through that. It's not a quick process, because we don't wreck our lives overnight. We wreck our lives over a long period of time. So sometimes it takes some time to rebuild the ship to get back on course, but there's always hope. I do not believe in a hopeless situation. So whatever situation you find yourself in, there is hope. And there are people that love you. and there is a way to find your path. The second thing is your attitude. That's the third letter. You have to have a winning attitude. And I ask people all the time, are you a winner or a whiner? Because you have to choose if you're going to be a winner or a whiner, because it's a choice to have a winning attitude. It's easy to be negative. It comes second nature for us to be negative and find the bad in life or find excuses, but it takes more energy to have a good attitude and have a winning attitude. But so you have to choose that. And another thing I want to encourage you to do, the letter C stands for chart a course. In the book, I tell a story about my father, who is a retired master mariner, and he has countless stories about sailing the world and how to navigate around the world and how to bring your ship safely into harbor. So I use that analogy. I won't go into detail because I want you to read the chapter. But the bottom line is you have to chart a course, because life has obstacles, and if you don't chart a course, a good course, and make course corrections daily, you're likely to find your ship to run aground. And like what I learned from my father, every good sailor makes course corrections throughout the journey. You don't just set a course from A to B and go in a straight line, because on a navigational chart, when you're sailing a ship, the shortest distance between 2 points is not a straight line in the ocean, because the map is not really flat. It's flat so that we can see it, but it's a Mercator projection, which means it's a spherical map laid out flat, so you can't navigate on a straight line. You have to make constant course corrections and make course corrections to stay on the right path. So that's why I use that analogy to encourage you to make daily corrections and to evaluate your life and see where you're at, where you want to be, and make those daily course corrections. Because again, in the military, we have a saying that you have to plan, but realize that as soon as you step off on step one of your mission, that no plan survives first contact. So you have to be ready to be flexible and make corrections to stay on the path that God has for you.
Amen. So
Amen,
we have 4 questions. Who is your inspiration every day?
Well, my ultimate inspiration is Jesus. And the Bible is my inspiration. My faith is my inspiration, the people I serve with. Like right now, I'm on a team of 5, so we have only been together about 6 months, so we're getting to know each other, but we kind of lift each other up because we come together. We all have our individual strengths and weaknesses, but together we form a great, strong team. And it's just interesting, we discovered recently that I'm the only extrovert and everyone else in the group is the introvert. So it's forcing me to grow, which is a good thing. But my ultimate source of encouragement and strength is the Lord Jesus. My family is a source of strength, and my patriotism. That goes back to my part about freedom. My 3 core values are faith, family, and freedom in lots of different ways. But part of that freedom is my patriotism to serve my country. The Army chaplain motto is Pro Deo et Patria. That means that we serve God and we serve our country. So I'm prior service enlisted. I was in the Army before I became a chaplain, and so I've always knew I wanted to serve in the military. So that's kind of about what grounds me is my faith, my family, and my sense of freedom and liberty. And I serve in the military also to ensure that the rest of America remains free, and my children and my grandchildren live in a free country with their liberty protected.
Would you say that this is also what keeps you going every day? There's another question, what keeps you going every day, but I think it's very rather the same, or is there any difference what inspires you every day and what keeps you going?
Yeah, I would say that's the same thing is my faith, my family. I have a desire to. I turned 51 this year, so the older I get, the harder it is to stay in shape. So I try to find motivation and passion to go through each day to stay in shape and do what I got to do to lose weight and stay in shape. Because my grandmother passed away last year, and she lived to be 102 years old. So I was like, well, she can live to be 102. I can live for 90. I've been telling people my goal is live to be 100, but you got to make 90 before you can make 100. So right now I'm focusing on 90 And my goal is to be a 75-year-old dude riding a 75-year-old Harley, and to be able to see my grandkids all grown and have to start their own family. So I got to take care of myself and live healthy spiritually, physically, and mentally so I can be a part of their lives, because I want to impart all the stuff that I've learned and mistakes that I've made and learned from into my grandchildren, because I want my grandsons and grandchildren to live a blessed life and a life of passion and purpose.
And what is the milestone in that you are most proud of in your personal and your professional life?
That's easy. My deployment to Iraq in 2007 and 8, because I know it was God, because like I said, I was only a chaplain for 4 months when I got deployed with this unit. And as I said before, I was an enlisted soldier before I became a chaplain. So I served in the military as a combat engineer. So, and on top of that, God is so good to work the details out of our life that he deployed me with an engineer unit so I could relate to the soldiers. And here's the icing on the cake, how God cares about the little details in our life. So the very first thing we did as a unit, and I was a reserve Army chaplain, and I had never even been to my Army Reserve duty. My first duty was with this unit when we were deployed. And the first thing we did was go to Fort McCoy for our leaders mode, where I was to meet with all the other people that are already in the unit that knew each other, because I didn't belong to this battalion. All the other people did. I was a cross level because they didn't have a chaplain. And the first group of 12 or 15 people I meet was a guy I served with at Fort Hood, Texas, 15 years before, when we were enlisted soldiers together. He was a senior NCO and I was a brand new chaplain. So I was like, if I ever doubted that God has a plan, it's like, I'll never doubt you again, God. So that deployment with him was awesome. It was a great tour when we were away from our families, but I can say without a doubt that I had an impact. And if I don't accomplish anything else the rest of my life, I have a great sense of pride, the privilege that I was able to do that. And most importantly, we came home with everybody we went over there with. And when we got done with our tour, we gave in the tour awards, and I remember shaking everyone's hand after they got their award. And I can honestly say I knew something about every soldier we were deployed with. So I take great pride in the fact that we had a successful mission. We came home together and we completed our mission. I had an impact on people's lives. Some of that impact I'll never know until the other side of eternity. But like I said, I still stay in contact with most of those people every day, or at least every week. At least every week through Facebook, we're always joking and sharing memes and talking about our experiences. And I didn't get a chance to share some of the details in the Facebook invitation. Said I'm working on a book. So this chapter writing for our Dominate the Decade book was the impetus for me to start finally working on the book for our deployment. So while I'm deployed to Kuwait, I'm also going to be starting the book about my time in Iraq. And so it's going to be some lessons that I learned, but also about the story of the other guys I was deployed with, the other soldiers, my comrades, and our stories, and how God has touched our lives and where our lives have led since that time.
Beautiful. And the last question is, how do you turn yourself positive when things are not going right in your life?
How do I stay positive? Talking to my wife and exercising and running and doing something physical to get that energy. Because like I said, I'm an extrovert, so I have energy, and if I don't burn my energy off, it's easier for me to be frustrated and lose my temper. Even now, sometimes if I have to be mindful of letting stuff build up. So I have to figure out a way to deal with frustrating situations. And for me, that's exercise. So I do P90X, I run, I work out, and talk to my wife a lot. So communication and prayer. And one of the things too I'm going to be doing through my private Facebook group is I did it when I was at the hospital. I did a weekly hour of power. So it's a prayer time and praise report time weekly. So I'm going to start doing that in my private Facebook group. And I want to invite you guys to be a part of that too. So prayer is definitely those things where I ask for God. When I become weak, when I'm weak, He is my strength. So that's definitely my main source of strength is God and His word, His promises that assure me that no matter what I go through, that He is with me, that I'm not alone, and that He will turn anything the enemy means for evil in my life to His glory and for my good.
Beautiful. Thank you, everybody who joined us. Thank you for all the questions. Joe, if someone wants, you just invited to this group, and if someone wants to contact you or send you some questions or ask for your advice, how they can contact you?
They can contact me by my email, which is chappygrace@gmail.com. I'll spell it phonetically like we do in the military. I'll spell out the letters. Charlie Hotel Alpha Papa Yankee Golf Romeo Alpha Charlie Echo at gmail.com. And then Ragni is going to post my link to my private Facebook group. So I sent it to her. She can post it. So I'm like the least technically savvy person. It's a miracle I can even get on Zoom. So I want you to come join my private Facebook group. So if somebody feels passionate about being a group moderator, you might want to step up to that invitation, because I want it to be a great thing, but I'm learning how to do it myself. So I set it up and you can come join it, but I'm building it literally like Paul Martinelli says, I'm building it. I jumped off the cliff and I'm building it on the way down.
That's incredible. Yes, we are going to share the link below the video, what you're watching now. So I hope that you made some notes. I hope that you will take action on those notes. And I really invite you to write those letters, those 3 letters, because even if it doesn't change your life, maybe it does, because Joe very nicely explained you also when we need to forgive someone or we need to release the emotions, then sometimes writing is the best way to do so. But more than that, you also have the possibility to change or impact someone else's life, and especially for those that are very close to you. Whether you haven't told them enough how you feel, whether you haven't had the chance to really explain them how you want your final day to look like. Maybe you don't want to share before all those things that you really own, but if you don't do it, then basically they will stay somewhere and nobody will find out. So really take the time, sit down, have this inner talk with yourself. Write down who you are, write down what is your footprint that you want to leave behind. Write down the letter for your loved ones. If you want, there you can do a general one to everyone, or one to each one. And if you don't have a will, then to your will, and the day that I'm gone, how you want to be taken care of. So we still have physical parts which we need to take care of. So thank you very much for joining us. And I'm going to be here on Monday, obviously the same time, the same place. And Joe, would you like to say your final words before you go? And God bless you and be safe in Kuwait. And we are all looking forward to hear about you again. So your final words to everybody who are here.
Yes, I would just say thank you for tuning in, and I will close by reciting my poem that I wrote for 2020. So it definitely applies to all what's going on now, and I reworded some of it. So regardless of circumstance, we've got to find hope. We've got to relax, reflect, and refuse to mope. I pray for God's joy down deep in your heart, and for a purpose, be ready to start. I'm with you as comrade, coach, and guide on your spiritual journey to walk alongside. May you experience meaningful transformation and lay hold of each and every aspiration. May you and your family be blessed beyond measure, united together in each day treasure. You may be experiencing hard times and grief. I pray for God's comfort and length to be brief. In every circumstance, may you be bolstered, encouraged daily, and have your soul stirred. Healing and release exists in humor. Of this, may you be a great consumer. A new year is here, so our minds have turned to what time has taught us, to what we have learned. We often focus all our action and thought on shiny things we've shopped and bought. We take our pleasure in material things, forgetting the pleasure that friendship brings. If much of our stuff just vanished today, we'd see the foundation of each happy day. It's special relationships, constant and true. Now is the time for the badass you. A mentor, a guide, a coach, a friend, required for the climb, the run, the ascend. This is the year that will rock it out. We'll murder mediocrity and delete all doubt. Get on board and go with grace. Kickstart your life with a new pace. A life with purpose and meaning. Upon God, we will do all the leaning. So let's make 2020 the best year ever and find success in all that we endeavor. So dominate your decade.
Thank you very much. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on Monday. Bye-bye.